Right now, in a cabinet somewhere in your kitchen, there's a box of oatmeal that is marketed as one of the healthiest breakfasts on the planet. And there's a real chance it's doing the opposite of what the label promises. Not because oats are bad. Oats, on their own, are one of the most studied, most nutrient-dense grains in human history. The problem is what happens to them after they leave the field. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which oatmeal products carry documented pesticide residue, which ones are quietly loaded with more sugar than a candy bar, and which ones are actually worth putting in your cart. This isn't guesswork. Every claim in this video is backed by independent lab testing, government data, or peer-reviewed research, and I'll tell you exactly where each number comes from. Let's start with the credibility, because a claim like this deserves scrutiny before it deserves your trust. The Environmental Working Group, a non-profit research organization, has spent nearly a decade sending oat-based products to independent laboratories for pesticide testing. Their first major study, published in 2018, tested 45 products made with conventionally grown oats. 43 of them came back positive for glyphosate, the active ingredient in the weed killer Roundup. 3 out of every 4 samples exceeded the health benchmark EWG, considered safe for children. That's not a fringe claim. That's a peer-reviewed testing methodology using accredited labs, cross-checked against United States Department of Agriculture pesticide data. The World Health Organization's cancer research arm has classified glyphosate as a probable human carcinogen, though it's worth being precise here, because the EPA disagrees and maintains that approved usage levels are safe. That disagreement itself is part of the story, and we'll come back to it. So why is a weed killer showing up in your breakfast at all? This is where most people's assumptions are wrong, and it's worth pausing on. Most people assume pesticides end up in food because farmers spray crops to kill weeds and insects while they grow. With oats, that's usually not what's happening. Farmers commonly spray glyphosate directly onto oat crops right before harvest as a desiccant, to dry the plants out faster and make harvesting more efficient. That means the chemical isn't just brushing past the crop. It's being applied directly to the grain days before it ends up in a factory, then a box, then your bowl. This practice is called pre-harvest desiccation, and it's completely legal in the United States. Here's where it gets specific. In that same 2018 testing round, the single highest glyphosate reading of any product ever recorded by EWG came from Quaker Oatmeal Square cereal at 2,837 parts per billion. That's nearly 18 times higher than EWG's children's health benchmark. 2 samples of Quaker old-fashioned oats came back above 1,000 parts per billion. General Mills Cheerios line wasn't far behind, with Honey Nut Cheerios averaging around 860 parts per billion across samples, and Cheerios Oat Crunch Cinnamon spiking as high as 1,171. Researchers even calculated that if pesticide residue had to be listed on the label the way added vitamins are, glyphosate would technically outrank vitamin D and B12 in Honey Nut Cheerios by sheer weight. Sit with that for a second. That's not speculation. That's a direct comparison EWG's own scientists ran on the lab data. But that's only the beginning, because the story doesn't stop at 2 of the biggest names in industry. When separate researchers expanded testing to store brands, the pattern held. Market Pantry brand instant oatmeal, Target's private label, tested as high as 520 parts per billion in the strawberries and cream flavor. Walmart's Great Value brand and a major regional chain called Giant both came in around 760 parts per billion in follow-up testing. Kellogg's Cracklin' Oat brand, another oat-based product marketed on health claims, tested between 120 and 250 parts per billion. What this tells us is important. This was never really about one bad company. It was about an entire conventional supply chain built around a farming shortcut that most consumers have never heard of. Now here's the part almost nobody talks about, and it's a twist that actually matters for your decision this week. Organic oats told a completely different story. Across every major testing round, roughly 2 out of every 3 organic oat samples showed no detectable glyphosate at all, and the ones that did contained levels far below the health benchmark. One product specifically flagged as clean across multiple tests was Simple Truth Organic Instant Oatmeal, Kroger's organic private label, which came back with non-detectable glyphosate in independent lab results. That's not marketing. That's the actual lab printout. The line between conventional and organic oats, at least on the specific issue, is about as stark as food testing gets. Stay with me, because the biggest revelation in this video is still ahead, and it has nothing to do with pesticides. But first, I want to give you some genuinely good news, because the story is improving. When EWG retested oat products in 2023, glyphosate levels had dropped significantly across the board. Quaker Oatmeal Squares, the same product that scored the worst reading in 2018, came back under 500 parts per billion in the newer round, with some samples as low as 20. Public pressure worked. Kellogg's publicly committed to sourcing oats from farmers who limit pre-harvest glyphosate use. Roughly 30% of conventional products still exceeded the safety benchmark in that most recent round, which is still meaningful, but it's a fraction of what was 5 years earlier. This is the part documentaries about food safety often skip, because a slow, boring improvement doesn't generate outrage. But it's the honest version of the story, and you deserve the honest version. Let's talk about the second problem, and this one has nothing to do with farming, and everything to do with the factory floor. Plain oats, the kind that come in a plastic bag with almost no marketing, contain essentially zero added sugar. Rolled oats, steel-cut oats, old-fashioned oats on their own are a complex carbohydrate with fiber, protein, and a low glycemic load. But the moment a company turns those oats into a flavored, single-serve, just-add-water packet, the entire nutritional profile changes. And this is where things get genuinely surprising. A regular packet of Quaker's maple and brown sugar instant oatmeal contains 16 grams of sugar. For context, that's more sugar gram for gram than a chocolate chip cookie. The apples and cinnamon flavor carries 14 grams. Cinnamon and spice comes in around 13. None of these are small servings hidden in a giant bowl. These are single 1-ounce packets, meant to be one serving, and most people eat two. To Quaker's credit, they've since released a lower sugar line that cuts those numbers roughly in half, down to around 4 to 7 grams per packet, sweetened partly with monk fruit extract. That's a real improvement, and it shows the industry responds when consumers push back. But it also proves something uncomfortable. The original flavored packets that have been on shelves for decades were engineered with far more added sugar than most people would ever guess by looking at a bowl of oatmeal. Here's a psychological trick at play, and understanding it will change how you shop. Oatmeal has what nutrition researchers call a health halo. Because the base ingredient, oats, has such a strong reputation for being wholesome, consumers subconsciously extend that trust to anything labeled oatmeal, even when a company adds several teaspoons of sugar, artificial flavoring, and gums to the final product. Studies on health halo effects, going back to research published in the Journal of Consumer Research, show that people underestimate the calorie and sugar content of foods marketed with health language by a significant margin, sometimes more than 30%. That's not a coincidence. That's a marketing strategy built on a psychological blind spot, and flavored instant oatmeal sits right at the center of it. What happened next surprised even food safety researchers. When they started looking closer at ingredient labels on flavored and protein-added instant oatmeal cups, they found something beyond just sugar. Many of these products contain added vegetable oils high in omega-6 fats, thickening gums like guar gum and xanthan gum, and in some cases, artificial flavoring designed to mimic maple or brown sugar rather than using the real thing. None of these ingredients are dangerous in isolation, but stacked together, in a product marketed as a clean, simple breakfast, they represent something closer to an ultra-processed food wearing the costume of a health food. This is a pattern nutrition scientists have flagged specifically with the rise of high-protein and flavored oatmeal cups over the last several years, where the ingredient list has grown from 4 or 5 items to 15 or more. Now, let's talk about something that affects every single oat product on the planet, organic or not, expensive or cheap. And this is genuinely the part where you need to pay the closest attention, because the real reason is more complicated than most videos on this topic let on. Oats, like rice, are what's called a bioaccumulator crop. That means the plant naturally absorbs trace minerals from the soil it grows in, including heavy metals like arsenic and cadmium, which occur naturally in soil and groundwater in varying concentrations around the world. This isn't contamination in the sense of a factory spill. It's basic plant biology. The same root systems that pull up water and nutrients also pull up whatever trace elements are sitting in that soil. Consumer testing organizations, including Clean Label Project, have run large-scale independent testing programs across dozens of packaged food categories, including grain-based products, checking for lead, arsenic, cadmium, and mercury using laboratory methods like inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry, the same equipment used in environmental science labs. Here's the nuance that matters, and I want to be precise instead of alarmist, because this is exactly where a lot of online content gets sloppy. The mere presence of a trace heavy metal in a food doesn't automatically mean that food is dangerous. Almost everything grown in soil, from spinach to sweet potatoes to rice to chocolate, contains some measurable trace amount of these elements, because they are naturally present in the Earth's crust. The question that actually matters is concentration, and whether that concentration crosses an established safety threshold, like California's Proposition 65 limits, which are intentionally set far stricter than federal guidelines. Some public health researchers argue that Prop 65's threshold is overly conservative and doesn't reflect real-world risk, while consumer advocacy groups argue it's exactly the kind of early warning system regulators should be using more broadly. Both sides have a point, and I'm not going to pretend this is a simple black and white issue, because it isn't. What this means practically is that reducing your exposure isn't about avoiding oats entirely. It's about reducing the layering effect, where you're getting trace exposure from oatmeal, plus rice, plus juice, plus a dozen other bioaccumulator foods in the same week. Rotating your grains, choosing steel-cut or rolled oats over ultra-processed oat products, and favoring brands that publish third-party contaminant testing gives you meaningfully more control, even if zero exposure isn't realistic for any whole food grown in actual soil. We're at the halfway point now, and here's a curiosity reset, because everything you've heard so far, the pesticides, the sugar, the trace metals, that's the diagnosis. What's coming next is the actual list, the specific products to put down, and just as importantly, the specific products worth picking up instead, based on everything we've just walked through. If you've been mentally sorting your own pantry while watching this, you're about to find out if you were right. Let's run through the 12 red flags. This is a countdown built directly from the lab data and ingredient patterns we just covered, moving from concerning to most concerning. Number 12, generic bargain brand quick oats blended with corn syrup or maltodextrin-based flavor powders. These are the unbranded tubs found at discount grocers, where the ingredient panel often lists a sweetener before the second gram of actual oat content is even relevant. Number 11, single-serve cinnamon and spice instant packets from major conventional brands, sitting around 13 grams of added sugar in a package small enough to fit in your palm. Number 10, apples and cinnamon-flavored instant packets from the same conventional lines, averaging 14 grams of sugar, a number most shoppers never check because the front of the box leads with the word wholesome. Number 9, flavored high-protein oatmeal cups loaded with thickening gums, added vegetable oils, and artificial flavoring stacked on top of whey or pea protein isolate, turning a simple grain into a 15-ingredient product. Number 8, Kellogg's Cracklin' Oat brand, which combined detectable glyphosate residue with one of the higher sugar and fat profiles of any oat-based cereal tested. Number 7, Giant Store brand instant oatmeal, which came back in independent testing around 760 parts per billion of glyphosate, among the higher readings recorded for any private label product. Number 6, Great Value brand flavored instant oatmeal from Walmart, testing in that same elevated range. A reminder that private label pricing doesn't mean private label products skip the same conventional pre-harvest sprayed oat supply chain. Number 5, Market Pantry instant oatmeal, Target's house brand, which hit 520 parts per billion in the strawberries and cream variety, more than 3 times EWG's health benchmark. Number 4, Cheerios Oat Crunch Cinnamon, which posted glyphosate readings as high as 1,171 parts per billion, among the highest of any oat cereal tested in the entire EWG dataset. Number 3, Honey Nut Cheerios, the product where researchers calculated that pesticide residue by weight would technically outrank the added vitamins proudly listed on the front of the box. Number 2, Quaker old-fashioned oats in its conventional, non-organic form, which returned samples above 1,000 parts per billion in original testing, a stark contrast to the organic version of the exact same product line. And number 1, Quaker Oatmeal Squares, the single highest glyphosate reading ever recorded in EWG's oat testing history, at nearly 18 times the recommended children's health benchmark. It's worth repeating the fair caveat here. Retesting in 2023 showed the same product had improved dramatically, down under 500 parts per billion. Companies can change. But it earned the top spot because no other product swung from worse to meaningfully better in front of the exact same researchers. Now for the part you've actually been waiting for, the 8 better choices. The ones that came out clean, simple, and genuinely worth the extra $1 or $2 at the store. Number 1. Bob's Red Mill Steel Cut Oats and their organic old-fashioned rolled oats. Single ingredient, whole grain oats, nothing else on the label, and a company with a long-standing reputation for third-party testing transparency. Number 2. Simple Truth Organic Instant Oatmeal, Kroger's organic private label, which tested as non-detectable for glyphosate in independent lab results, proving that organic private label doesn't mean lower standards. Number 3. Nature's Path Organic Oatmeal, USDA certified organic, sourced without synthetic pesticide use, and consistently one of the cleaner options in third-party organic supply chain audits. Number 4. 1 Degree Organic Food Sprouted Steel-Cut Oats, grown on farms that publish where their oats come from, down to the specific field, a level of transparency almost no conventional brand offers. Number 5. Purely Elizabeth Organic Ancient Grain Oatmeal, which blends oats with other whole grains and controls added sugar tightly compared to conventional flavored packets, without relying on artificial flavoring. Number 6. McCann's Irish Oatmeal, steel-cut and unflavored, a product that has built its entire brand identity around doing essentially nothing to the oat beyond cutting and packaging it. Number 7. 365 by Whole Foods Market Organic Oats, a store brand that, unlike several conventional private labels we just covered, sources organic oats as a baseline standard rather than a premium upsell. Number 8. Trader Joe's Organic Steel-Cut Oats and their Scottish Oatmeal, both praised repeatedly by nutrition writers for short ingredient lists and a price point that undercuts most other organic options on this list. So what's the actual takeaway here? The one thing worth remembering after this video ends? It isn't that oatmeal is secretly bad for you. It's that the word oatmeal on a label tells you almost nothing on its own. The difference between the best and worst products in this exact category can mean 12 grams of hidden sugar, a measurable pesticide residue gap, or a completely different farming practice, all sitting on the same grocery store shelf, sometimes 1 foot apart. The fix isn't complicated. Flip the box over. Look for a short ingredient list where oats are essentially the only thing listed. Choose organic when the price difference is small enough to absorb, especially given how consistently it correlated with lower pesticide residue across every independent test we covered. And if you want flavor, add your own honey, cinnamon, or fruit to plain oats rather than buying it pre-sweetened, because you control the amount, the company doesn't. Food companies aren't obligated to protect you from a health halo. That responsibility sits with the label and now with what you know. If this kind of breakdown helped you see your own pantry differently, the best thing you can do is share it with a person who does your grocery shopping, because a 5-minute label check, done once, changes every single box you buy after it. Drop a comment with a brand sitting in your cabinet right now. I read everyone. And if you want more investigations like this one, subscribe, because there's a lot more hiding in plain sight on grocery store shelves than most people ever get told.